Hi, and welcome back to McFadden Family Homestead. This is Samantha. It's time we brought some cooking back to the channel. Yes, this is a very large pitcher of eggs. It's actually my blender. We're going to make some breakfast sandwiches for the freezer. We're going to do some freezer cooking. I picked up, you saw in our grocery haul, I picked up a couple dozen croissants from Sam's Club, so we're going to turn those into sandwiches and have some breakfast sandwiches in our freezer. I've been doing freezer cooking for years and years in different ways ever since my son was little. He's a teenager now, and there's all kinds of different things that we can do together. I think freezer cooking is just one of the best ways to make sure and help you get scratch-made meals on your table at a convenience. So I've never actually done the eggs this way. You're seeing me pour the blended eggs into a buttered pan. This is the largest sheet pan that I have. I did that because I knew I would be able to get 24 portions probably from this. But if I had to do it again, I probably would not do this same method. I actually own what's called a muffin top pan, and it has probably about 3-inch round shallow circles in it, and I think that just works better. This was a little bit harder to get it to kind of cook evenly, but it is completely done, and we're going to go ahead and portion this out in 24 portions as best we can. This is one of those things in cooking that is kind of a little bit of a struggle for me, getting like, you know, perfectly even measurements the first time around. I usually have to come back and reconfigure my strategy, but we do make this work. The other reason I chose this pan was because all my other sheet pans are getting kind of warped. They kind of sink in at the middle, and this one is pretty flat. So I was kind of hoping that it would be more even, that it would cook more evenly at an even thickness, but honestly that really just was not the case. There are parts of this that are much thinner than others, and there's some parts that are really thick. So I definitely probably would not do this method again. I would go to my muffin top pan that makes, you know, the nice little circles to put on the sandwiches. I think really is just the best way to go and helps things to cook real evenly, because some things, as you can see, were a little bit, you know, more brown on the bottom just because they were thinner. So these are the croissants that we got, and we're just going to go ahead and slice all of those up. We bought, there's a dozen in each box. We bought 2 boxes. Sam's Club has a great prices on these. I think these were like $5.98 or something for 12. And if I get 6 at my local grocery store, you know, they're anywhere from $4 to $5.99, you know, sometimes just for 6 of them. So this is an incredible deal to take advantage of, especially if you're planning on doing some freezer cooking. And the croissants, actually, I've done different breakfast sandwiches throughout the years. I have done bagels. I do not care for bagels as a breakfast sandwich. It's just too chewy. It's too much bread. I have done English muffins, which work out great. No problems there. And the croissants also are really, really nice. They don't get hard, you know, or crunchy or anything like that. And we'll talk about the proper way to reheat these. But we did a couple of varieties. I did a package of sausage. I didn't show cooking up the sausage or the bacon. I figured you can just cook those however, you know, you like to cook them. So I'm putting 2 sausage patties and, you know, a little rectangle there of egg. I did not put the cheese on because if we were to reheat these, you know, they're frozen or thawed, you know, or whatever, and the cheese was already on there, the cheese would just get overcooked and over melted. So I figured we would just put the cheese on fresh whenever we get these sandwiches out. It is absolutely best if you have the forethought the night before to pull out a sandwich for yourself and put it in the refrigerator, so that it can thaw and be thawed when you heat it. It will heat up better that way, but they do heat up just fine from frozen state. I have found that if it's thawed, one of the best ways to reheat this is just to go ahead and take the meat and the egg off of the sandwich and heat that up separately for about a minute. And then put that together back on the croissant, add a slice of cheese, and go ahead and put that back in the microwave for maybe another 20-25 seconds, you know, max. It doesn't take long for the croissant to soften and the butter inside of it to get, you know, nice and melty, and for the cheese to get melted. And I did do some that were just egg at my daughter's request. She doesn't really like cheese or meat on her croissants, but she sure does love egg croissants. One of the other things that we did recently was make those hamburger buns again, and I wanted to show those to you because I was really impressed with this hamburger bun recipe, and I will have it linked in the description box for you. This is just some of the ingredients that we're going to need. Here we have our yeast, our warm water, and sugar, and this is what it looks like after it sits for about probably 5 to 10 minutes. And then the recipe calls for adding the butter and I think some oil and the other ingredients, and then the flour. And so I do have this sped up quite a bit. It's not actually mixing as quickly as it seems, but for the sake of your time, I did want to go ahead and just speed this up a little bit. You can see how easily this dough is going to come together. On this particular day, I did have to add more flour than I did the first time that I made this recipe. So that could be for two different reasons. One, it could, you know, have something to do with whatever the weather was that day. You know, humidity and temperature and all these things, you know, bread can be so finicky. So, you know, it could have just been, you know, needing more, you know, for that reason. Or I had also, the first time I made this, I had used my organic flour, my organic all-purpose flour that I had gotten from Azure Standard, and I'm out of that. So this is actually the King Arthur all-purpose flour that I had purchased recently. And, you know, different flours do different things. So different brands of flour are different. So it could very well just be that, you know, that we needed, it was the flour that was the issue, or a combination of the both. Who knows? You know, he said bread is, it's taken me, I've been cooking for a long time. Like I have been cooking since I was 12 years old. I have been, in the last couple of decades, you know, made different attempts here or there at making homemade bread, and bread has always been one of those things that has been very challenging for me, and not wanting to do what I wanted to do. But I am, as I've been telling people, I am finally in my bread era, and I think that has something to do with the fact that I have discovered that my oven has a bread proofing setting, and that makes all the difference in the world, because proofing bread has been the biggest problem. If not, you know, actually making a dough that looks like it could become something, it's the proofing that is the problem. So we are finding success thanks to the proofing setting, and we're very happy. So you can see this dough is very soft. It is such a nice dough to work with. It really is. It comes together very easily. It just looks nice. Doesn't it just look nice? So we're going to put this in a clean bowl. I'm going to go get some olive oil, and I'm just going to put a little bit of that in the bowl. I'm going to put the top of the dough down, kind of zhuzh it around a little bit and flip it over, and then I'll cover that and I'll put that in the proofer. And this is what it looks like when it comes out. You can see it's nice and risen. And now we're going to just play around with this a little bit. Portioning dough is, you can see I'm thinking about what am I going to do here? I don't know. And we're making remarks, the same thing, with just like the eggs. Always end up having to go back and do it differently. I don't get all of these, you know, portions exactly the same. I don't care if the hamburger buns are exactly the same. I'm not that much of a perfectionist. What I care about is the end result. Does it taste good? If it was smaller than my hamburger, I think I would probably have a problem. But as long as the burger fits, we're good to go. So we're just going to go ahead. You can see it's just such a nice dough. And you see all those bubbles? That yeast is really active in there. It's just a nice rich dough. I put about 5 on each sheet pan. I got 10 out of this. I think it's, the recipe says like 8 to 10 rolls probably. But we did 10, and they do expand a good bit. They do proof up a good bit. So I like to leave a lot of space because I don't want them to touch each other. I have found that using a dry towel as opposed to a damp cloth works better for me because the proof setting in the oven is, creates a kind of dampness, on its own. And then if I have a, damp towel, it actually sticks to my dough, and I don't like when that happens. So the recipe also calls for an egg white wash, which I did the first time I made it, but I don't see any real reason for that, to just, pitch an egg yolk. So I just mixed up the whole egg and used a whole egg wash, and it's all fine. So I'm putting some sesame seeds on the top so that it can look like a true blue hamburger bun, and they're just beautiful. They're so light. They look like they're kind of thick, but it is such a light roll. You almost barely notice it. It just balances so well with your burger. And this is our burger here at the end. I promise you there is a burger at the very bottom of that. And also in one of our, I think it was the beginning of our grocery haul video, we talked about a black bean dip that I wanted to make, and so that's what this is here. I don't know if you want to call it a dip, if you want to call it a salsa. I never really know what to call this thing, but it's always call it delicious because it is fantastic. I actually got this recipe from a friend years ago. I have adapted it a little bit because I make it in smaller quantities, and so I make the dressing just a little bit different. So I just use 1 can of black beans that I, rinse off real good, and then I add a can of white shoepeg corn, is what it's called. Now, if for some reason you don't like that kind of corn, I imagine you can use yellow corn, but I just like, this is what it called for originally, and I liked it, and I go with it. So I also add probably about a half a cup of feta cheese. More or less to your liking. I just use whatever was left in this container. Like I said, it's probably maybe like somewhere between a quarter and a half a cup. So that's all of the ingredients that go in there outside of the dressing. Now the dressing is very simply a quarter cup of apple cider vinegar, a quarter cup of olive oil, and a quarter cup of sugar. And I did use the Domino sugar in this because all I'm going to do is shake this up to mix it, and the Domino sugar would have, and I'm sure did, dissolve a lot better than the coarser grain organic sugar that I have. So I was kind of glad that I did have that on hand when I went to make this. So you're going to see, I'm just going to put all those things together, and you'll have to forgive my kind of shaky filming because I am literally got my phone in one hand and I'm using the other hand to make this dip. So you talk about something that's easy to do. You can literally do this just about one-handed. So you can see we're going to just shake up the dressing and try to shake it up vigorously. I think I probably put the phone down at that point so that I could shake it up nice and vigorously, but you just pour it on there, toss it all around, and it is so good. Now I'm going to eat this with a tortilla chips that we got from Sam's, but what I really prefer with this dip is what I had with it the very first time I ever had it, is multigrain Tostitos scoops. Scoops really, really work a lot better for eating this because the elements, when you have this flat chip, as you'll see, you're either going to break your chip or they kind of will fall off, real easily. The scoops kind of keep them in there. And the multigrain scoops, I don't know, the flavor is just so much better with that. So now I'm just going to show you a little bit about storing those dry goods that we got. So it is recommended that when you get these bulk dry goods, these organic goods, that you stick them in the freezer for at least 24 hours. So consider that whenever if you do decide to purchase, consider the freezer space that you have. These are all 25-pound bags that you see, and I can fit them in my stand-up deep freezer. And the reason you do that is because they are organic. There's not been any kind of like pesticides or chemicals or anything like that that's been used to keep pests at bay. So, just in case there is anything in there, if there is any eggs or anything like that in the freezer for at least 24 hours, will kill anything that is in there so that your product, does not get ruined by some kind of pest. Now, I've not seen any evidence, of any kind of pest in any product that I have ever bought at this point, but that is just best practice that's recommended by people that have been using these products for years. So these are 5-gallon food grade buckets. I had the sugar in one. This is oats. This is the first time I've bought 25 pounds of oats, so I did not realize it was going to take 2 buckets to fill. It took almost 2 full buckets, and but I did have plenty of buckets. I'll link these on Amazon. I got a set of 3 for about $50 on Amazon. Sugar, 25 pounds of sugar will fit. It takes up just a little bit more than half of the bucket, so I can't fit both bags in there. And flour will just about fill up the whole thing too, but we don't have any flour to show you today. You will see jasmine rice at the end that I just kind of left the sound on that one for a little bit of ASMR fun. But so this is these buckets, well, they work out absolutely great, and then I usually have some smaller container to keep them in on the shelf.